Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op.
So, Ben, my feed has been full of fun-looking pictures from Boston.
Yes, it has.
Specifically your pictures.
They are my pictures. I haven't even gotten around to editing the wedding, which is why I flew to Boston in the first place. I was shooting a wedding out there. But yeah, just kind of some of the fun photo shoot places. So for fun context, me and my wife are huge nerds, if you haven't already figured that out, dear listener. But because we were going to Boston, one of her favorite games is Fallout 4, which takes place in Boston. So she brought a Pip-Boy along, and we followed the Freedom Trail and did a Fallout-inspired photo shoot and had a good nerdy time. It was fabulous.
How well did it match up? I'm curious. I know this isn't photo related, but how well did it match up?
Yeah, no. So it pretty close. So one thing that I will say is things like the Boston Library, very, very closely matched up. Mm-hmm. Things like the fountain that it starts at, the fountain is technically there, but nothing around it matches up.
Okay.
Of like the fountain is there, but there's supposed to be like a gazebo, but instead there was like a hot dog cart and like, yeah, no, like... There are some that are incredibly accurate and some that are not all accurate. And I think for just the sense of scale and spacing, they put some of the like towns and structures a little closer together than they otherwise actually are in the city. But otherwise, it was a pretty faithful recreation. Like Trina was actually able to navigate the city a little bit.
Wow. Video game skills being applicable to real life.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, we got into Faneuil Hall and it's like, so do you feel like super mutants are gonna pop out at any moment? Yes, I do. I have been here many times, even though it's my first time in Boston.
Well, that's very cool. But you went to Boston to photograph a wedding, right? Among other things.
I did. Yeah, so I went to Boston.
What was the photographic experience besides the gaming experience? What was the photographic experience like?
So I went to Boston to photograph a wedding, and on the Saturday of the actual wedding, I was the big man in charge, right? Mm-hmm. I got to use my outdoor voice and yell at people and get them to, corral, herding cats, normal wedding stuff, which actually that'll be a fun topic for my YouTube channel. I think I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Sneak peek here. Anyway, so it was all good, and when I wanted to go shoot a thing, I could go shoot a thing. When I asked a receptionist, hey, do you mind if I move this pile of magazines? She said, yes, absolutely, let me get those for you. There was just this just kind of like I had free run of the country club, and I could do what I wanted because I was the professional who they had paid both me and the country club to be there, and we're working to make that possible. Now, the rest of the photographic experience was very, very different. So we talked, was it last week? We talked about multiple cameras. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was last week? Okay.
Yep.
So we talked about how having multiple cameras, like some for fun and some, and there was like this article that I saw where it's like, I hate using that camera for fun. I much prefer using this one. Well, I don't, even though you talked about that article about multiple cameras, I didn't have any of them. Everything had to fit on a carry-on. I had my one camera plus my backup body because it is a wedding after all. I need to make sure I have my backup body, but they're identical. So I just have this one body and big-ass lenses. Like, I don't shoot mirrorless.
Yeah.
Wedding photographers that shoot mirrorless, good for you. But I've got my full EF Canon rig, so it's big stuff. So even when I'm doing touristy type stuff, I look like I'm carrying a professional camera because I am. Mm-hmm. Now, most of the time, that was not an issue. When we were going down the Freedom Trail, some people would stop me and ask what I was doing, and I'd just like hand them one of my cards and they'd laugh and kind of like stand around and ask me questions, and like that was fine. But I went into the Boston Public Library, which is incredible, by the way. If you ever have a chance to go to Boston, go see the library. They have these absolutely gorgeous murals in kind of this grand stairwell, and then you go up to like this top, like third or fourth floor kind of just galley, and it's just these beautiful murals. And so, of course, people go up there, and the only rules up there are no flash photography. Like,
Yeah,
you're allowed
that's
to
fair.
take photos. You're allowed to take photos, no flash. They're like, these are very old, very delicate, very one of a kind. It took the artists like 20 years or something to make these murals. Like, they're absolutely incredible and huge and beautiful. But one of the things, we went up there just not because of our photo shoot for the Fallout stuff, but just to experience and be a tourist and enjoy our mini vacation that I tacked a couple extra days onto this wedding trip for. Because COVID, we haven't been able to travel anywhere for a while. So I figured, like, let's turn it into like a mini 3-day vacation.
Yeah.
But when we were traveling up the stairwell, there was one door that was this big, like, iron door with, like, the rivets and the brads and, like, the very cool old door that had, like, a chained padlock on it. And Trina is wearing her comic book dress, and she's got her Pip-Boy on her arm. And she's like, hey, how cool would it be if I grabbed one of my hairpins and looked like I was trying to, like, pick this lock
Nice.
for a photo shoot, right? That's so Fallout. So I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So she grabs the padlock, and I grab my camera, and I'm like, hey, can you just like turn your nose a little bit, and then okay, and shift your foot, and then got the photo. But as I was getting a photo, a security guard walked by me and said, excuse me, I have to ask, are you a professional photographer? So that is kind of what this episode is about. Now, the answer is yes, I am a professional photographer. That's why I have a podcast about photography. But what she's really asking is, did you get a permit to be allowed to do this? Is this a commercial shoot that you are making money illegally because you didn't get that permit? No, we're on vacation and I'm just dicking around. That's like essentially what it is. But because I had a model, and because I had a big freaking camera, and because I looked like I know what I'm doing, I get targeted, even though the guy standing next to me was about a 60-year-old Asian gentleman with a L-series lens on a Canon 1DX. But him, no, he's just fine. She doesn't ask him.
You didn't look touristy enough, Ben.
Right? It's funny because I was actually wearing my Loki cosplay, that shirt from and tie. But to anyone who hasn't seen it, it's just a shirt and tie.
So what did you tell him? Did you tell him you were a professional or not?
My brain went into slow motion of here are the 15 different ways I can answer that question. And Trina very quickly jumped in while my brain was processing and said, no, not a professional photographer. And she just kind of looked at me like, I do not believe you. And then said, okay. And then kept walking. So like that experience definitely could have gone differently. But this is a thing that is not new to me. So, like a very good example is the Seattle Public Library has a policy, no professional photography. None at all. They don't do professional photography. However, it is beautiful and has interesting architecture, and they have one level specifically that they call like the Red Room, where people love taking photos. And this is incredibly popular for photographers, and they're kind of just okay with it unless you look like you're a professional. So like when I was studying architecture in college, I had an assignment to take my DSLR to the library and shoot shots of the interior architecture. So then when someone stopped me, is like, excuse me, are you a professional photographer? I'm like, no, I'm 17 and I'm a student. And they're like, okay, carry on. And they left me alone. But like, so I don't know. it's kind of weird to me when the like museums and libraries and stuff will kind of call you out on being a professional photographer, and I don't think you should necessarily lie about it, but also sometimes like the rules are stupid and it's just a lot easier to just,
So here's a question for you. If you're an Instagram influencer and you have somebody take you a picture of you with a...
If you're an Instagram influencer, just stop. You're done now. We don't need any more. Sorry, your question. Continue.
If you make money on Instagram from cell phone photos and you take a photo in a professional photographers are not allowed place and you make ad revenue off of that photo, do you count as a professional photographer or not, according to the security?
Yes.
That's what I want to know.
You count as a professional douchebag. I realize my language is a lot saltier in this episode, but it's because it annoys me so much. So I totally get places that have like art and murals and things that can fade. No flash photography. Cool. That's a given. Another thing that they will do is no tripods or light stands. That is not just so you don't mark up their floors, but it's also a tripping hazard.
Yeah, that's fair.
So there's a lot of things like that. You get a lot of interesting quizzical looks when you bring a monopod in, because they're like, no stands. And you're like, yeah, it's not a tripod. And then they have to like,
How much do I want to fight this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think part of it is you need to be as absolutely respectful of as possible of I wasn't being loud, I wasn't taking up a lot of space, I wasn't in anyone's way, I wasn't using flash, I wasn't being that obnoxious photographer who's trying to get the perfect photo. I was on vacation just taking some photos of my wife, but because my tendency is, I took a photo of you and it's unflattering, let me fix it. And someone saw that. They're like, whoa, this guy knows what he's doing. He's not allowed here.
So they're obviously discriminating primarily based on gear, but there's such a range, I feel like, of cameras that's probably not the best way to go about doing this. I mean, right, like,
absolutely.
Look at something like the RX100 series from Sony. Like, that's a point and shoot and looks totally like a, just at least externally to somebody not who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, it looks like your mom's point and shoot.
Yeah, but it's really like a $1,400 like the best camera of that size on the planet, and people can and continually shoot professional work on it.
Like the last time that I shot the last time I shot a Mariners game, yes, I did have a media pass, so I was allowed to get in with my full-size DSLR, but all the signs say no interchangeable lenses.
Why does that matter?
Exactly. Why does it matter?
It doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
It means nothing.
What if you don't change the lens out? What if you leave the lens on, and how will they know?
Right? I'm just a tourist, and I've got my 28 to 300 all-in-one lens.
Yeah, you could be like
it's
that.
It's so arbitrary.
What is it? The Nikon P100 or P1000 or whatever, that insane like super zoom. It's like, I don't need any other lenses. I got everything.
Well, you brought up a good point earlier. What about people that are influencers that are, shoot on their iPhone?
Yeah.
A person who's an influencer and shooting on their iPhone is going to be 100 times more annoying in that space than a tourist with a professional camera who wants to get a quick snap and move on with their day.
Yeah, and also I feel like the professional photographer thing is a misnomer. Like, you can make money off of media you produce without being ostensibly a professional photographer in the strictest form of those words. Like, I don't understand why this continues to be a thing, why this continues to be a point of discrimination. I mean, with how the landscape is now. I think really what it is
so there's like a Japanese garden around here where they say absolutely no professional photography, and they have people specifically hired to just stand around and hover and make sure you're not doing any professional photography. So if you take a photo of any of their flowers, they're fine. If you put a person in front of that photo, they immediately freak out on you and kick you out of the park.
So if you're just like there with a friend, let's say you're not a photographer or anything, if you're just there with a friend with a cell phone.
In that instance, it does not matter. You are not allowed to take pictures of other people, or they will consider you a professional photographer, even with a cell phone.
Bizarre.
Because that's kind of where they draw the line of like, no, you're trying to do a photo shoot. If you want to do that, you have to go through our media department and buy a permit and do it when off hours.
Interesting.
So that is like we're protecting our revenue of like you have to pay if you're trying to do a photo shoot here. But I can respect all the lines get drawn.
I can respect that a little bit more, I think, because they're at least consistent. They're like, it doesn't matter what camera it is. If you're shooting a photo in this particular way, that's not okay. Versus in a library or a museum or something.
But what about my friend Steven, who's a fine art photographer, and he takes that photo of a flower and now, or of the Japanese garden, and now he's selling it in a museum gallery. Like, he didn't pay for a permit.
Yeah, that's fair. And I wonder how far they would take it. Like, if I was wearing a GoPro or a little Insta360 camera or something, and it was attached to me, and somebody walked in front of me, and it got a picture of them in front of the flowers, like, does that count? How far do we want to go with this?
That is really funny.
Right? And if I'm not actively taking the picture, does it count?
That is a really funny point. Well, there's like one venue that I'm not going to call by name because I'm about to say a bunch of bad things about them. So they have a beautiful venue, but their contract is complete BS. Their contract says, hey, wedding couple who is paying us money, you give away the rights of a third party, which is not a thing that you are legally allowed to do in a contract. So they wrote a thing in their contract that is not legally enforceable at all. What they're saying is, you know, that other photographer who has every contractual and legal right to their photos, if they shoot here, you are signing away their rights, and we own the copyright to their photos. That is what their contract says for wedding couples.
They're just rolling the dice until somebody with deep enough pockets sues them. Like, that will end someday.
And it also says, like, we will have your photographer sign and agree to this. And if your photographer does sign and agree to that, that photographer's an idiot. Yeah. I told my couple in no uncertain terms, I absolutely 100% refuse to sign that. I will not do it. They do not get my copyright. And the reason why this venue does it is because they're like, well, we've had people try and sell stock photos of our venue, and we're trying to like curate our image. You're not allowed to do that. You can absolutely sell all the photos to your couple and do like prints and albums and stuff, that and put it on your website. That's fine. But technically, if you own the copyright, it's not fine. Because that's not how the law works.
Yeah. That sounds like a them problem.
That is a them problem, to the point where like they had enough mosquitoes that they just decided to napalm the house.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
That's essentially what it's. Yeah. It's.
Well, what do you think the solution is for this kind of stuff then? I mean, there are obviously a large variety of enforcement styles, let's say, for this kind of stuff. What would, if you were the one making the rules for a library or a museum or something, what would you think is a fair rule, if any?
So there are definitely some places like the Vatican that are no photos of any kind, cell phone or otherwise. When I was in college, I did a study abroad, and I went to the Vatican, and the guy next to me sneakily took a photo with his cell phone, and the cell phone did the noise. And I had a full-size DSLR around my neck, and they kicked me out.
That's nice.
Because they thought it was me. So that's fun. So one way is just blanket ban, no photos. If you want the art, you can buy it from the gift shop. Like that's I'm not a fan, but
at least they're consistent.
The other way would be no flash, no stands, no tripods, if you put blanket bans on that, a lot of that is safety for both the art and the people around. And I actually did an engagement shoot in it used to be called Safeco Field. What is it now? T-Mobile Field?
Yes.
Baseball field.
Yeah, T-Mobile Field. I think
they did all of the Christmas lights down on the field, and you could and they absolutely allowed and encouraged professional photographers. But their thing is still no tripods, no light stands. We do not allow them into the park. Like, they can ruin the turf or whatever.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I hired an assistant, and I had a voice-activated light stand. The assistant held my light and my softbox, and everything was fine.
There you go.
And they were totally okay with that. And in fact, like, security was okay with that. And when people saw that I was a professional photographer with a softbox, a huge freaking softbox, they're like, oh, I should get out of that guy's way.
All right.
Like, that was fine.
Yeah.
No, so in the Seattle Public Library, like, I totally get the no professionals, but that is just such a weird. And I think the bigger issue here is that kind of to self-regulate, and I think a lot of people give photographers a bad name by doing all of the things that you're not allowed to do. When they say no professionals without a permit or whatever, and then professionals lie and say, oh, no, I'm not a professional, and now that photo is showing up on iStock or whatever. Well, now they have a problem. Obviously, you lied about it. So I think it's more of a don't be a douchebag and kind of be honest. But the other thing, too, is, like, when I was in Boston, of, like, I'm not selling this photo to anyone. This is just something for me and my Facebook friends, because it's a funny picture of my wife with her Fallout gear picking this really cool lock on this really cool door, right? Yeah, I have no qualms in that one being like, this is not a professional photo shoot. It doesn't count. But I am a professional photographer. It's just a weird and arbitrary line.
Yeah, I feel like the language needs to change, because what they really mean in that instance is not, are you a professional photographer? It's, are you monetizing this photo, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And maybe that's a better question for museums or libraries, whoever, to ask, is not talk about if you can change your lenses out, not talk about the quality of the gear, but are you monetizing this? Yes or no? Because that'll catch everybody, right? Like, if you're an influencer, I mean, people can lie, of course, but at least that question is consistent, where, if you're an influencer with a cell phone, if you're a professional shooting stock, everybody, like, are you monetizing this? That answer is yes if they are, and no if they're not, period. So maybe that's a better way of asking.
While I think that is a lot better way to define it, allowing people to self-select is going to end in disaster. I mean, we wanted people to wear masks, and look how well that's turning out for us.
Well, how do you avoid self-selection then?
I don't know. There's no easy answer besides, like, napalming the house and putting a blanket ban on everything.
Yeah, or, like, invasively searching people for cameras if they enter your space. That seems
Which
crazy.
is what they do at Safeco.
That's true.
I mean, I get that way they're trying to, like, prevent terrorists, which is a very different kind of thing. But no, they even opened up, like, the battery compartments on my cameras and had me turn them on to make sure they were functional cameras and stuff. They were weirdly thorough when I did that shoot. Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that if you have a publicly accessible space, it might be it might be private property, but, like, you service the public. You've got a lot of people coming in and out every day. I think the cat's out of the bag at this point in time. Like, yeah, saying no flash photography, saying no stands or whatever is fine, but I feel like we should just get over this. Cameras are getting better and better and smaller. I mean, cell phones do cell phones count as multiple lens cameras if they've got multiple lenses and sensors? Because they do a lot of the time.
Mine has 4.
Right? Yeah, I mean, where do you start drawing the line for what counts as professional grade equipment? I mean, I was looking at that little Insta 360 camera, the, like, Go 2, that's tiny. It's literally, like, that big, and you could hide that so easily in a jacket or, backpack or whatever, and shoot some pretty fantastic looking photos or videos with it. I mean, I feel like we should get over this. If you have a publicly accessible space, you need to just like, this is happening. Like, cameras are out there everywhere, and it's such a logistical nightmare to try to control them. I feel like that should just not be a topic of conversation anymore. Yeah, no stands, that's easy to enforce. No flash photography, fine.
I mean, in places like the Vatican or other museums where it's we're trying to protect our revenue from the gift shop.
Yeah.
Of like, I like I said, I don't like it, but I at least understand the blanket ban. But no, the lack of consistency is really what bugs me.
Yeah, at least you should be consistent, because oh boy, especially the influencer market, like that's the thing that my mind consistently goes to, is like, this is a place where people are making substantial amounts of money.
Oh, influencers with cell phones make way more than I do.
Gear, right? Yeah. Like, we need to be over this. There is a line between professional and non-professional gear. As we talked about last episode, we have a bunch, even just between the two of us, we have a bunch of random cameras, and many of them would be considered not professional gear, but you can shoot professional things with them. So
this is not at all related, kind of, but when I was going through TSA, their line of what considers an electronic, because they said, please pull out and lay flat all of your electronics. And I said, sir, do you see these two large carry-ons? Literally everything in here is an electronic. I'm going to need the next 9 to 10 tray bins I'm going to do that. And he said, anything bigger than your cell phone. So like, that's where he draws the line. I'm like, okay, so all of these like cords and cables and like small batteries and like all of those kind of got left. But like all my big flashes had to come out. He said I could leave the lenses in. He said lenses are the exception because we know what those look like, but like everything else bigger than your cell phone. At least it's some kind of consistency-ish rule.
That hasn't been consistent for me, because when I went to Japan a couple years ago and brought big lenses on my big camera and a bunch of random gear, I left it all in there. Like, when they said electronic devices, it was like phone, laptop, tablet, or whatever, and I left the rest of it in there. They said absolutely nothing. So
when I went through, so after I took off my jacket and shoes and stuff, I had 5 tray bins. Okay, 4 of those 5 tray bins got flagged for further inspection.
Oh, they don't like those batteries. That seems to be a thing for me.
No,
I've been flagged for inspection with USB batteries, and I'm like, look, it literally is under your limit. I don't understand the problem, but not consistent, right? Because they also say don't have batteries over a certain size, but if you have multiple batteries that are under that size, but in total they're larger, then they don't care. Then it's okay.
I brought my bullet brick of batteries. That's fine. Yep. But one big battery is not fine. I don't know.
So I guess what we're saying with this episode is, whether you're restricting photographers or not, no matter what industry you work in, at least be consistent with your rules.
That'd be great. That would be great. And if you're a photographer who's going into one of these spaces where it's questionable, don't be a dick. Just if it is a place where you need a permit, get a permit. Don't shoot there otherwise. I feel like this is pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly. Just be a nice human being and don't get in people's way and be as unobtrusive as possible, and that'll go a long way. I feel like I've been
one of these days I'm gonna have to do a supercut of us just saying don't be a dick.
That's like half of our episodes at this point. Moral of the story, don't be a dick.
That's not a bad place to cut right there. If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at NomCreative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.